The presentation today is titled Native Wise, LLC, Our Mission to Revitalize and Share Indigenous Agricultural Practices with David Wise, Ojibwe. David is well-versed in the traditional agricultural practices passed down to him from many generations of Ojibwe ancestors. He has a passion for reconnecting Native youth to their culture and the land. David holds a BS in environmental science and has worked for the USDA-Natural Resources Conservation Service as a conservation planner and tribal liaison. David and his wife Patra Wise regularly host educational classes focusing on a variety of agricultural and cultural topics at Dancing Crane Ranch, which they founded in 2021. These classes are open to the public. More information can be found at www.nativewisellc.net or on Facebook on Native Wise LLC or by emailing nativewisellc@gmail.com. David, the floor is yours.
Oh, I'd just like to say it's an honor to be here with all of you here today and talking about such a timely and important topic. Those issues that you brought up earlier are at the forefront of what we're trying to address here at our ranch by educating the next generation, whether it be Native youth or just mainstream people. We're always interested in passing on our oral traditions. As Native people, we're here in this area because of a vision that we had, and it was an environmental vision centuries ago that took place on the northeast coast of North America, where we began our new voyage this way, and we're traveling to the place where the food grows on the water. Of course, that's the Monoman, the good seed, we call it in our oral tradition. And this would have been the 7th stopping place along the way. So if you look at maps of current United States, and you'll see reservations, and you'll see Algonquin or Ojibwe speaking people all along those stopping points. And so it's really deep in my history to protect the Monoman, because for us it's like maybe like a like a holy offering is for Catholics or Christians and things like that. So for us, the wild rice is not only a food, but it's also a spiritual connection that we have with it. It is a very sensitive plant, but it's also a very resilient plant. It can lay on the bottom of lakes and rivers for many years before it sprouts again. And sometimes the climate is just right for that year, and we'll have a bumper crop. And some years it's not as good. We might have high water at certain times of the year. But the Monoman is a strong plant, and it provides some of the best food, natural food that we can eat here on Earth, I believe. But it is very sensitive to pollutants and especially sulfide. So that's a very very sensitive subject for me. I can't believe that we're even talking about foreign companies creating this kind of a possible disaster in our area when we're in the headwaters of so many watersheds, and we have so much potential for locally grown foods, and water is one of the most valuable resources we got, and one of the most limited. Everyone's concerned about oil and all that stuff, but I think we should start looking toward getting off of fossil fuels and moving toward more of a sustainable. And I think one of the really easy ways that we can do that is local foods. We can eliminate a lot of that carbon footprint in the first place just from the transportation, plus all the good things that we can grow here in our world. We got I said, we have clean water and good soils, and we've been experimenting with a high tunnel. And for you guys that might not have heard of that, it's an NRCS program. I used to work for the NRCS, and it helps extend your growing season. And we grow a lot of we don't, like, our kids are always like, well, we don't buy a lot of stuff from the grocery store. We save a lot of our vegetables over and either dehydrate them or can them or freeze them. And so I just think that, it's really important for us to protect what we have here. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here at our ranch. Is we're a for-profit with some of our different items that we sell, like our wild rice, our syrup, our honey, and our bison meat. We just started into we're trying to develop a sustainable herd of bison. We have around 50 head right now, and we're working on building a processing facility that will be right here on the ranch, so that way the animals won't have to be stressed out in transportation. And we're also trying to do rotational grazing. This was my great aunt and uncle's old cattle ranch for years. It was a dairy farm for a while. It was sheep farmers. You can see evidence that they were here during the pioneer like homestead days. You can find old woven wire. So and before that, the creek that flows through our ranch is called Animasung Creek, and that means the mist on the water in the Ojibwe language. And my couple greats back grandfather was Chief Animasung, and that creek flows from. It actually kind of connects the St. Louis or the Lake Superior watershed. There's just a short little piece of ground in between there that separates that from the Kettle River and then the Mississippi, like you were talking about earlier. So it was probably a very prized area to be, because we're rich in this area with rivers that have monomen and lakes that have monomen, and I like to. That's one of my favorite times of the year, being out there to share that resource with natives and non-natives. I see a lot of old friends when I go to the boat landings racing, and there's a lot of tradition been passed on in our overall community about wild rice and how to harvest it in a respectful way, because you want to just take that day's seed. You don't want to hit the plants hard. You want to just pass through that rice and take that day's rice. And when you're picking that rice, it's a symbiotic relationship with the lake as well, or the river you're in. Because if you're pulling through there you're stirring up the bottom and you're creating a niche for those seeds that fall off, the ones that don't make it into the canoe, to go back in and reseed that lake. And in our oral tradition, we took wild rice from different lakes and seeded in different areas and stuff too. So if you look at maps of all the historical wild rice lakes in Minnesota, you'd see that there's a lot of them, and probably about 2/3 of them still have wild rice today. Some of them have been flooded out for like recreational lakes and things like that, but the majority of them are intact, and they're a wonderful resource, not only for the people but for the wildlife, and for a lot of that area, that shallow lake area like that, is good for purifying our waters and our springs and different things. So it takes a lot of nutrients in, and they found that wild rice flourishes every time there's like natural fire. So like there was more of a, back in the past, there were smaller fires, more frequent fires that help benefit our ecosystem too. And I think sometimes we're just, we as man, we try to over manage things sometimes, and it can lead to like bigger fires and hotter fires and things. So sometimes it's just trying to work with nature, I think is what I try to work on here at the ranch. And we're looking at becoming a nonprofit so that we can do more educational pieces with the community and help be like an incubator farm for helping other beginning farmers and ranchers that might want to start out. We can maybe help them with some of the learning curve, because some of the packaging and different things, labeling, it's kind of like takes a lot of time to figure all that out. But I really enjoy my life here on the ranch. It's nice being able to go out and interact with the animals each morning and see what's going on out there at different times of the year. And we're trying to make sure that we keep good practices for rotational grazing, because that can really help store a lot of carbon and build up your soils. Because if you just take hay off of a field year after year, eventually it gets depleted. Then you have to put more inputs in. Whereas if you have the animals doing their natural thing on there, I noticed that the paddocks that we've had for the last couple of years are getting way more productive. And if I can allow them to rest for like 21 days, it's amazing how much more grass I got for them to eat. And they're starting to knock down some of the brush, the areas that were turning into brush. And actually the bison sort of mimic fire, because they take in the carbon and they store it back into the, it gets back stored into the soil bank. And so one of my dreams is there's a huge wetland complex around Rice Portage Lake, we have 5 wild rice flowage lakes on this reservation. I grew up on Perch Lake. That's one of the headwaters ones. And then it flows down Stony Brook, and that's all part of the it's part of the St. Louis and then into Lake Superior watershed. So each one of those lakes has a little bit different, like the rice is kind of like wine or something. Each lake has a little different flavor of rice. So that's one thing that we compare. We're like, oh, that's rice port. We'll try to guess, well, where did that rice come from if you go to someone's house and eat some of it. And then at different times of the year, if you harvest the rice early in the season, it'll be more of a green color, and it'll be more, it'll have a different flavor than the later season rice. But getting back to my thought there on the wetland complex, so Wild Rice Lake is surrounded by like at least a couple thousand acres of grassland, sedgy meadows and things like that. So we were brushing a couple years ago, and the guy struck a rock. It was real dry, untimely dry at that time of the year. And it started a 20-acre fire on the ranch. Well, yeah, everyone got a little nervous about that. We had a lot of good help from the local firefighters and the DNR, and I was thankful that they said it was an act of, it wasn't like an intentional thing, because it was set by the machine. But so anyways, we fenced that area in. It had a historical fence line in there so that we were taken out. And so after we fenced it in, it was really brushy, and I didn't even know if I was going to fence it in. But after that fire went through, it was amazing, the growth in there, and the bison just loved it. And we talk about we are what we eat. Well, when those bison eat those medicine plants that are down in there that are natural native vegetation, that's good for our bodies as well as it's good. They know it's good for them, and it's gonna be good for us. So we don't feed any artificial feeds. We just do the grass grazing, and we put out mineral for them and stuff like that. But we're trying to keep it as natural and sustainable as we can, and then build the system up over time, because if you can rotate your animals correctly, you can up your carrying capacity, and in turn that would be good for productivity. And right now we're supplying some of our meat products for a couple Whole Food stores in Duluth and one in Cloquet. And then we do a couple different restaurants. So we're just, starting out in the whole thing. But it's been really exciting and a lot of work to get going. But it's very rewarding to see a smile on people's faces and get good feedback that they like the product. And we were able to have some for the local powwow. And by the way, you're all invited to come to. We have 2 powwows here at Fond Du Lac. We have the Veterans Powwow in July, and then in August we have the Sobriety Powwow. And they're both on Big Lake, and it's free to the public, and you can come and meet some of your neighbors, and we can mingle and have a good time and celebrate the different seasons. We usually try to celebrate every season and show respect to the Creator for all the good bounty and the different things that happen during those different seasons. And Menomin Nkegisis, the wild rice moon, that's a real special season there. That's what helped us sustain us through these tough winters. Without the staple food of Menomin, nobody really would have been able to live around here for long periods of time. Back in the day, it was there was no grocery stores. Even my grandmother, she grew up. Her first language was Ojibwe, and that was back in the like turn of the century when horses were doing the work. And my grandfather, he helped clear a lot of this land, and they had like a small farm to start out with, and because he came from a different culture than she did. And the Ojibways did garden. They did have gardens. There was records from the voyagers that they wrote when they first came here that they grew a lot of squash, corn, and beans, and different tubers and things like that. But that's another thing about that wild rice ecosystem. There's other plants in there besides the wild rice, like the arrowhead plants and the cattails and the different tubers, and a lot of those things are so healthy for us. I think we could reduce a lot of our health problems in this country if people would eat more seasonally and more locally. I think sometimes we're too much, and myself included, too much into the feast, too often. So I've been trying to look at my own health a little bit. I gained a little weight. I think I was kind of stressed out about all this building, this infrastructure and buildings, and just I don't know. It's kind of almost out of my realm. Some of that stuff gets a little mind-boggling at times, but I'm looking at it like I'm building it for future generations, and maybe it can be like a model for helping because there's a lot of land on this reservation that's underutilized that I think some of the next generations could do more sugar bushing, and maybe some different kind of agricultural things that are beneficial to the environment, or that at least are not harming the environment. And I think we need to look at long term. In Ojibwe culture, we talk about 7 generations. That's what our traditions are based on, and we're supposed to think about 7 generations ahead. And what are we leaving behind for the next generation? Are we leaving pollution and destruction, or are we trying to build something that's more permanent, that's more sustainable, that's working with the land and not so much extracting from the land or creating? I'm all for progress. We got to have certain things, but should we really analyze what are the long-term effects going to be before we make hasty decisions? Because so often, almost always, after those kind of things happen, there's a lot of things left behind that the people that take all the proceeds, they don't have to worry about it because it's not in their backyard. So I'll tell you a little more about the ranch because the slides will jog my memory. So That's me and my brother on Perch Lake. We're coming in with a nice little load of Monome in there, and then we started a CSA. Well, we were both still working our other jobs. Um, we did a CSA, so it was mostly based on heirloom vegetables and growing them in our high tunnel. The kids really enjoyed helping put the boxes together and learn about like figuring everything out, because we had each week we'd have another box. Then it was great to work with some of the we really it was really a benefit to work with ACO, the American Indian Housing office in Duluth, because they had a spot where we could bring the boxes, and then people would come and pick them up, and then we would donate a few boxes each week if we had extra vegetables, because then it would go for like low income families or whatever. But it was actually a very rewarding to make those boxes look good, and I really think hearing back from the community that they liked it. And it was during the pandemic, so there was a lot of unrest about food availability and all that stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been up to. We do a wild rice class each year and show students how to do everything that you're basically told not to do in a canoe: stand up, lean over the side. So sometimes we end up taking a little bath there. I see a student in there and it looked kind of windy that day, but anyways, it's cool to see the look on their face when they master some of the skills, because wild ricing is really actually a lot of good. It's kind of like that paddle boarding, if you ever seen people doing that. You're standing up, so you got to work on your balance. You're using your whole body to get the canoe through those tough situations, and then the knocker is also expending a lot of energy. But if you have a good team, boy, it's actually kind of fun to do it. Yeah, this is some more of the vegetables, and we were able to get the youth involved. We used row cover for some of our stuff that we were growing. We dabbled in hemp for a while. We made a few products out of hemp and kind of tested the market on that, and it was pretty good. But we've kind of gotten out of that since the laws have changed and things are kind of going in a different direction. We kind of got out of that because of the insurance costs. So we use QuickBooks, and we try to figure out like what is going to be the best alternative for us. And hemp really wasn't it for us. But oh, there's my beautiful wife right there. She loves pollinators, so we did a lot of pollinator plantings, and that really helped our beehives out and helped all of our garden stuff. So she was planting a lot of things in between the rows, and I was like, honey, those are weeds. And she was like, no, they're pollinators. So I was like, cool, I don't have to weed them. Great. But it actually was amazing having the row cover in there, how we didn't have soil loss going on. We had tons of pollinators, and it went really good, until we did get an issue with some rodents chewing some of our drip line irrigation. And I felt like Caddyshack chasing those things around out there and trying to figure out what to do. But in the end, we ended up using a different product. So it's always like that, figure out what works for you thing. And I always encourage people to start out slow and then just kind of, instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, because that was one thing that we had to replace a lot of that drip line, and that was kind of a ordeal. But we loved doing the three sisters. So we were growing the corn, the beans, and the squash together, because they companion plant really well. But you got to make sure you do them at the right times of the year, or like the corn has to have a little bit of a head start, otherwise the squash can choke it out. But the beans fix the nitrogen for the corn, and then the squash shades out the weeds. And it was cool to see some of those varieties that we grew, like the different gourds. And oh my god, the kids were all excited. And then they came out, and we had like a little corn maze for them to go through. And and they helped with the beginning of the planting it, and then we planted it in the shape of a medicine wheel, kind of with the different 4 different quadrants for the different directions, and the students just they were out there helping, and there was a lot of bugs around. There was more than pollinators. There was bugs that were trying to get a little blood once in a while too, I think. But the kids were, all the students were really they loved seeing the stuff grow, and it was just amazing how big it got. We used some of that. We were actually using some rice hulls from the processing the wild rice, mixed in with some different compost from our gardens and from our chickens and things like that we had kind of let compost for a couple of years, and it was corn was huge and just amazing that year. And yeah, lately we haven't been doing as much gardening because we've been so busy with all this other fencing and stuff, but I'd like to get back into that a little more. The kids have been asking, well, are we going to do the boxes again? And I was like, yeah, we should do the boxes again. So we might do it again one of these times. But it is a big commitment, and you really have to keep on top of all that stuff. It's all about timing with the gardening. We also did, those are some of our boxes. We also did Lake Superior whitefish, so we do about 100 pounds of that in my smoker each. We do it like maybe 3 or 4 times, throughout the summer months that we were doing the CSA, and that was a really big hit. And we helped, and I think we helped out some of the fishermen too, because there was a few fishermen that had extra fish, and so I still continue to do whitefish for different community members and events and things like that. So, well, we started out with a small herd. We only had 12 to start with, and they're all females. And that was a really good idea because I got to learn a lot about bison in general. And then now we're getting bigger, more numbers and different age classes. And our oldest one is, we have a bull. He's his name's Brutus, and he's like as big as a bull can get, I think. He's like 12 years old, and he was at a zoo up until we got him this fall. And so he's been having the time of his life out there, just mingling with all the other ones. And he's the big, we had another mature bull, but he wasn't that as big as him. So Renegade and Brutus they decide they're going to be buddies. They're not fighting, thank God. And they're out there. Yeah, they're pretty vocal. If anyone ever wants to come out and see them, be welcome to come out and just drop us an email or give us a call. And we like showing people around the ranch. So this is an example of some of our products that we have, our packaging for bison meat. We love to do workshops and giveaways to the youth, and then they can bring home some good food with them, and it helps me. They pay attention good because then they know we're going to ask questions. So they love winning all the different items and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun, and we hear from their grandparents that they liked it. So it's always cool. My wife's really behind the Ojibwe Horse Club more than me. But we have these Ojibwe Spirit horses that we're fostering. There's only 200 of them left in the whole world. And the story behind them is back in the 1970s, there got down to only like 4 horses, and they were up in Canada, just across the border. And I guess they were eating crops or something up there. There was a lot of them, like there was quite a few back like in the early 1900s and before. And the story with them is they're one of the original horses of America, and they think maybe they never went extinct, is the story, because they go back in our oral tradition for many generations that they've always been around here. And when they did DNA testing on them, they're different than all other horses. So they have a different nose flaps and ear flaps that are suited more for the cold weather. And so we're trying to bring back the breed. There's only a registered breed of them in Canada now. that's where most of them are, and we're trying to get a breed for the U.S. So we're hoping. I think there's 3 other farms that have them in the U.S., and we're trying to reconnect the tribal communities with them. They were used for things like pulling wood, and they're kind of like a miniature workhorse, like not as big as a regular horse, and it's bigger than a pony, you know. But they're real hardy, and they're real kind of got the black lab kind of a mentality. They're real follow me around the field type horses. So they're cool, and yeah, we think one of them might be having a baby this spring. So her name is Ochitamu, the gray squirrel, and because she kind of has that gray look to her. But yeah, they're pretty cool horses. So if you want to come out and see them, we're always trying to bring more of an awareness to them and reconnect the community. And they're good little riding horses, especially for like youth and stuff like that, because they're not real big. So yeah, this was the first. I think this was the first official Ojibwe Horse Club class. So they learn all about, or maybe it was the second. I think the first one they learned about grooming and cleaning the feet and health, you know, horses and the do's and don'ts, and you know, because you don't want to startle horses and you want to make sure they know you're coming behind them. And so then after that, we did the actual ride. They actually got to be, you know, for their first rides, and man, you should have seen their faces. They were really lighting up when they got to hang out with the horses. So now we're trying to do a nonprofit where we would build a riding kind of an arena where we could train the horses, and then they could interact with them all throughout the year. Because right now in the winter it kind of slows way down because it's so, you know, this year's been so unseasonably icy. I haven't even really wanted to ride horses much because it's been so slippery this year. But it seems like our seasons are kind of out of whack or something. I was glad to see the snow come. Well, this little horse, his name's Echo, and he wouldn't let anyone touch him. He was like kind of mistreated or something where he was. From what we heard, he was real skinny when he got here, and they couldn't catch him or nothing. And so after a while of working with him and just building trust, and this old guy I met when I was looking at a saddle, he was feeling real bad about selling his saddle, and I was like, well, why don't you come out to the ranch and, you know, interact with the horses a little bit. So it turns out I call him Dan the Horseman, and he's been so helpful. And he comes out like at least once a week. He helps me with trimming the horses' feet. He knows a ton about horses, and he used to wrangle broncos and all that stuff. So he said he doesn't, he's like an elder, and he goes away like limping, or I mean, he's a daredevil. He tries to do crazy stuff. Yeah, Dan, he's something else, but he's been very helpful, and he was actually the one that really built a good relationship. Now this horse trusts people again, and he's been really, really good to have around. So, oh, I guess our future plans are to just, you know, try to concentrate on the things that are working right for our ranch, um, and also build the educational component. I think that's our real goal, is to build that so that we can, because our ranch is only going to be so big, you know, we only have so much land here for the bison and that, and that's kind of what we want anyway. We want something that's sustainable, and so I think the educational part is really, to me, like, I think sometimes like, well, what do I want to leave behind when I'm not here, you know? I want to leave something that's sustainable, that's good for the environment, and that can help feed future generations. I mean, that would be my ultimate goal, to leave something here that's better than when I found it. So that's kind of what we're striving to do here at the ranch, and you know, whatever we can do to work with our community, speak out about some of the things that are going on right now in the government, and with you know, the crazy stuff that we're dealing with right now in society. and just praying that our environment will be able to sustain us in the future, and that we won't do things that have such long lasting effects that they'll, we can still be able to survive on this Mother Earth. So that's where I'm at with it. Like I said earlier, anyone's welcome to come out, and we don't charge anything to come and see the bison or whatever. Just if you want to come out and check out the ranch, we're right between Cromwell and Sawyer, and we're off of Highway 210 on Spirit Lake Road, and then Cary Road. That was my great aunt and uncle's last name. We're at the dead end of that. And we have Stony Brook, and then so we'd like to do a little bit of like classes on the ecology of the waterways here too. There's a lot of old journals written about this area when the voyagers came through here, and abundance of wild rice and fish, and it was really a good place to live here. We got the maple trees, we got cedar swamps for hunting deer in the winter time. So it was kind of a really a beautiful sacred area to us here, and I feel blessed to be able to still be here and have good clean water and air and soil to kind of help keep our vision going, So that's kind of where we're at here at the ranch. I don't know if you guys got any questions.
Thank you, David. I had a question about where can we buy your harvest again?
Cloquet Naturals carries some of our products, but most everything at the Whole Foods in Duluth. Otherwise, right here at the farm, we're actually building my wife has an online business that she, sends things out. But if anyone wants to stop by the farm, it's a lot more economical for us and for them. So all you'd have to do is set up an appointment by email or call. And then we have all of our products here. We're building a little storefront right now. So we're building a building that's 48 by 50. It'll be all insulated. It'll have a small meat cutting shop in there, and then storage for all of our dry goods like the wild rice, syrup, honey, and things like that. And then there'll also be a classroom in there for, if we are teaching a class and the weather's or whatever, we might want to go over something inside, before we go out. But most of our classes were outside. We're measuring the forage. We're looking at clippings for the grass, for the bison. We're part of a climate smart study. So there's always something going on here. And we were really lucky. We had a group of soil scientists come out here under one of these federal grants and map all of our soils. And they said the soils were just amazingly diverse in the area because of all the different watersheds that come together right here. So just all that, there's always something going on, it seems like, with educational opportunities. And we'd like to keep that really going into the future and see how productive can we make our lands and have bison back on the landscape, and what are the health benefits to some of these local foods versus, stuff that we're getting from places that we don't even know what the soil's like.
Okay, the questions are coming in. Do you have a nonprofit or a place to donate?
I'll let my wife handle that one. Not yet. She's in the middle of forming one right now. She's working with there was a lady an attorney, and she had a grant or something, and we went to one of her seminars, and so she's helping us through that process. So soon we should have something like that.
Chelsea, Bob, and Sam want to know, where can we see when classes are and sign up for them?
Okay, my wife will be posting that on our website, right?
Yeah, or just email their info and we can let them know.
Or if you email your info, she can put you on her she has like a little mailing list for, like community members and whatever. Otherwise, usually she's up. I think once we get our nonprofit going, we'll have more of a prevalence on our website for all that kind of stuff. We love volunteers to come out on those days too. to help with, because there's usually a lot of students, and I don't know, I love to see the elders interacting with the students. That's just my thing.
Another question is, what are the most notable effects of sulfates or sulfides on Monoman? Miigwech.
Oh, I think it's just really lowers the productivity to the point where it wouldn't even be able to grow depending on the levels of that. It's very sensitive to that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's one of the big threats that we face. And everything's connected. The waterways are connected, the air blowing around, and there's already getting higher levels of that in our ecosystem. And so if we introduce more of it, that would, I already see signs of wild rice struggling in this climate change stuff. And so I just don't think that's a good timing to do that.
Emily says, I'm in awe of the talent and achievement of this speaker and his ranch. Wow. Thank you for sharing this presentation. Follow-up question. How long do bison live?
They can, and in the right conditions, they can live to be almost around 30 years old. But in the wild, they probably were more like 12 to 15. We had an incident the other day. We had our first non-planned harvest because we had, I think what happened was a bull chased a younger bull into the fence, and then it ended up hurting its back because I went out there in the morning and it was not in good shape. So we ended up having to butcher that one without planning it. But yeah, that was the first time that anything like that had happened. But it's kind of weird, like the bull's acting like it's breeding season. I'm like, what's going on?
Question, how many workers do you employ to do the various tasks of the farm?
My wife and I, and we sometimes hire community members for different, like during certain seasons, like the rice harvest season, things like that. But we need to, we're burning a little thin right now. We don't really have any full-time employees other than just us right this moment. But we would love to employ a ranch hand or two because, building all that fence is a lot of work. But we do try to get, like students that are out for the summer, because that's when a lot of the work happens. So that's been helpful to get some of the students to help.
Question, are there any resources or guides to learn more about the effects of sulfides on Monoman? Do you have any advice on how to deal with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency wanting to raise site-specific standards on our protected wild rice waters? Miigwech?
Well, I think the university, when I was at UMD, the NRRI had come up with a lot of that data. And, to me, data speaks for itself. And if those tests were done and those experiments were done, I don't understand where they're coming from on raising it. Based on what? What's it based on? Just that the plant can barely exist, or the plant can flourish and produce food and seed and for long generations? Because that sulfide is something that builds up in the system over time, and if it wants, especially lakes that don't have any kind of a flow to them, that could build up in there from air or from any kind of contamination, and that lake would be no longer suitable for being able to grow rice. If you go just a little bit west of here, that won't grow because it's too alkaline there, in the Dakotas and stuff like that. So it's super sensitive to the pH levels and all that stuff. And we're right in the heart of Monoman here. If you go up into Canada, or just draw a circle right around here, and that's where it is.
A couple of comments. This enterprise and the presentation today are so exciting. Thank you for sharing your wonderful success story. And great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one more question. On the question related to Monoman and sulfides, Tamarack Water Alliance will further research that topic and put it in our website. tamarackwateralliance.org.
Yeah, I would really like to do is I'd like to get, since we're right on these flowages that go into the wild rice lakes, I know the reservation monitors water quality and things like that, but I'd like to get youth groups involved so that the next generation is aware of this stuff, because if we don't pass it on, then it's not going to be important. And you know, I'm all for like natives and non-natives harvesting wild rice in the right way, you know, and being respectful with it, because the more we have people that want to interact with that environment, the more we can protect it. You know, if it's important to everyone, it'll be a higher priority. So I think the more we can educate, the better.
Any last thoughts? We got a few minutes left before 11 o'clock, and you have to go back to your angry buffalo on the ice.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be a NHL hockey game out there right now. So we had a waterer that stuck on. We got these waters that don't require electricity. It's like a hydrant. So when the animal pushes down on the pan, it turns on a lever way under the ground where you can pull the whole thing out and work on it. That's what I thought. Oh, those sound really good. No electric, you can work on them. Well, I didn't realize that bison's heads were this big and they have this hair that hangs down. So when they drip the water over, it creates like a big icicle. And then the darn thing stuck on. So when I went out there this morning, Brutus was out there walking around on the ice, chasing a cow, going, "Rrr." I'm like, oh my God, where did all this ice come from, you know? So I run over to the other water, and here it was on all night running, but thank God it was on a hill. So, and all it was I had to knock a couple little pieces of ice off of it, and it was fine. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna figure out something with that. That's on my bucket list, to figure out how can I create the bison mustache bib or something. So, yeah, they got a skating rink out there. But yeah, I'd like to really genuinely invite anyone who wants to come out, and we'll try to post any of those events. We're going to have a workshop, I think, coming up in June on processing a bison the traditional way. And so we're opening up to anyone that wants to come. And then I think we'll have some that will have like a cook thing going on, and the kids will be learning about it. And we'll have some native artists here talking about how to utilize the different parts of the bison. So look for that if you have any interest in coming out for that.
Well, I'll be there, and I think you'll see a few more of us your way. It's
cool.
Really exciting that you're so close. I'm over on the other side of Tamarack. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a wonderful day, and it was nice chatting with all of you, and thanks for the compliments and the inputs. And I hope we can all work together to protect our environment a little more in these crazy days that we're facing right now.